Yeah.
24 hours a day that we all save that.
Again, no one is to be able to come in or out, so you're here. Everyone can remain seated, but please come back forward and put it.
All right. I see both sides ready. Mr. Batey is in the courtroom. We have a pre-sentence report. What says the state?
Court please, the state would ask the pre-sentence report to be made exhibit for purposes of hearing. We have reviewed it. I believe it is complete. We've also filed 6 enhancement factors for the court, which we would ask those be made exhibits for the purpose of this hearing. They are also included in the pre-sentence report. We failed to list one that we just learned about, is that Mr. Batey has failed to pay his fees as ordered by this court, which I think is an additional enhancement factor that the court may consider in sentencing pursuant to the statute. We'd also like to incorporate by reference all the testimony and evidence that's been introduced in all the hearings and to address the court and tell the court what impact this horrific crime has had on her at this time.
All right, she has that right, but let me ask Mr. Robinson, do you have any objections or corrections to the pre-sentence report?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
We have filed a pre-sentence memorandum, Your Honor, which we have asked to be included with the pre-sentence report, as well as we sent in, mailed a letter of mitigation and opposition to the enhancement.
All of which I've read. I've read all the matters filed by both sides, but right now, any objections or corrections to the pre-sentence?
No, Your Honor, other than, I guess, the timeliness of an objection or the enhancement and an objection to the notice on the additional enhancement factor. I know Your Honor will give it the appropriate weight, but given the timeliness of it, we would object.
All right, that's fine. Okay, bring the victim.
She's going to stand at the podium if that's okay with the court.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. It's hard for me to stand here on display and speak to you today about the impact this has had on my life. The thought of sharing any more of myself that hasn't already been taken from me seems unbearable, and it goes against every instinct that I have. I was fearful of giving a victim impact statement at all because I know that after 3 years and everything that has happened, I can never do it justice, and I'm scared of that failure. It will never be possible for anyone to put into words how this has affected me, and you will never understand what this has done to me if you aren't standing in my shoes. The humiliation, the pain, the isolation, being reduced to nothing but a piece of flesh right before your eyes. It does something to you that's truly impossible to describe. I also know that it's hard to encapsulate the impact this has had because it is still ongoing. The attack on me didn't end that day because I relive it in every proceeding and experience additional attacks every time I'm in court. When I let myself think of this, I become so angry and feel so powerless, even today, that speaking coherently about it at all is a challenge. But after what was done to me that night, and after 3 years of abuse at the hands of the defendant, I felt I had to come here and ask the court to consider the impact of his choices and his actions. On June 22nd of 2013, I was a happy, hardworking Vanderbilt student looking forward to my future. I was 21 years old. I've seen with my own eyes what I was when Mr. Batey was done with me. A piece of trash, face down in a hallway, covered in his urine and palm prints. A photograph he took himself. There are no words to describe the horror of the images from that night and how it feels to watch yourself be dehumanized. A detective showed me some of those photos and videos that you and 42 jurors have now seen so many times. And what I saw was image after image of my genitalia covering the entire frame on the screen. These stark, alien-looking fingers all over the flesh were moving from frame to frame with multiple hands reaching in. Videos played, and I heard the laughing. I heard the degrading, taunting voices. My memory of the images I was shown then starts to flash in and out. The realization of all the ways that they raped me, that people can see these close-up images of my body, the unknown of what was done to me in those 30 minutes that wasn't recorded, it was incomprehensible. I wanted to run away and never stop running. At one point I saw what I first thought was a dead woman's face. I was suddenly overwhelmed by my memory of a family member's corpse, and then I realized that it's me. They had taken a picture of my face during the rape. I was lifeless, and my face was covered in something shiny. I didn't recognize myself. Something permanent snapped that day. I felt myself detached from my body. Now I feel like I'm walking around in the shell of someone else. A part of me went numb. A sense of being a whole person with hopes and dreams about what's possible in the world was now gone. I thought my belief that people are inherently good turned into some cruel joke in an instant. I even blamed myself for believing that people weren't capable of something like this and that the world is a better place than it is, when the truth was that I did nothing wrong. No one should ever have to experience what I have. Mr. Batey is to blame for his actions and his choices. I was 21 years old when this happened. I'm 24 today. Since the horror of that night, all I have wanted is for this to be behind me, to be left alone, and to try and live my life in peace. But the process to get justice has just been a never-ending, constant misery that has twisted itself so into my life that I can't even remember what it was like in a time when this wasn't happening. Everything the defendant has done in this case and the media circus surrounding it have been a continuous disruption, repeatedly dragging me back every single step I try to take forward. I can only feel that the defendant has intentionally wanted this to be as torturous for me as possible. Part of the impact this has had and will continue to have on my life is the media scrutiny, invited by Mr. Batey's own high-profile status and amplified by his own television interviews. What happened to me that night has been compounded by the live streaming, tweeting, and international dissemination of every detail of how I was degraded and humiliated for all posterity. In this age of technology, anyone I ever meet in my personal or professional life can learn that I am a rape victim and the details of the case before I've even fully introduced myself to them. There is no way for me to even know if any given person I interact with has done so. This is something I now have to expect for the rest of my life. It is also hard for me to push aside all of the attempts by the defendant to misrepresent himself and disparage my character, because I could stand here for hours talking about the impact of all the lies I've had to sit in this courtroom and listen to. I remember each and every one of them, and every time it hurt me. It made me angry because I didn't have a voice and I couldn't say anything. I shouldn't even have to defend myself, and even if I could, everything I share about myself here is repeated by the national media. It got so bad that for the last 2 trials, I couldn't even bear to sit in here and listen to it. Part of me does want to stand here for hours and hours and go through every single thing Mr. Batey has done throughout this case. But the truth is that the focus never should have been on me. I was unconscious. I was driven and carried to the crime scene. The defendant was a complete stranger. Again, the attack on me didn't end that day because I relive it in every proceeding and am constantly experiencing additional attacks. The fact that I even had to breathe the same air as the men who did this to me ever again is unthinkable. But I have endured all of this because the details of the rape are so horrific and there's so much irrefutable evidence. I knew they had to be stopped and held accountable. This is a serious, violent crime, and it must receive the enhanced punishment it deserves. Any victim should know that they would have justice if they went through the process. I am asking that Mr. Batey receive the maximum sentence of 25 years under the law to set the amount of time that he will not be able to do this to another victim, to deter others like him, and based on the particularly egregious nature of the rape itself. He did not commit just one act of violence against me. There were 5 acts of sexual assault and rape committed by him and him alone, and there were 7 acts of violence he was found guilty of committing against me. But sexual assault was not where the attack ended. Mr. Batey continued to abuse and degrade me, urinating on my face while uttering horrific racial hate speech that suggested I deserved what he was doing to me because of the color of my skin. He didn't even know who I was. I also ask for the maximum sentence of 25 years, as is appropriate, for the impact this has had and will continue to have on me every single day for the rest of my life.
All right, any other?
Nothing further from the state, Your Honor, please.
All right. Defense.
Your Honor, I would at this time like to, I know the state previously incorporated by reference the entire transcript and exhibits from the trial, which I believe would include the testimony of David Whitfield, Your Honor, Dr. Lippman's report. We're also asking that the testimony of Dr. Walker from the original trial be included, as well as his report, as well as Mr. Beatty's testimony from the first trial. And with that said, Your Honor, the first witness for Mr. Beatty will be Pastor Grimes, Pastor Johnny Grimes.
Face the clerk and raise your right hand.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Close to the mic. Closer, please.
You are Pastor Johnny Grimes, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And at what church are you a pastor, please?
New Metropolitan Christian Missionary Baptist Church.
And you know Cory Batey?
Yes, sir.
And how long have you known Mr. Batey?
I've known him about 20 some odd years of family.
Okay. And how did you first get to know Mr. Batey?
Through his family.
Okay. And who all in his family do you know?
His mother, his aunt, and his uncle, and the whole family just about is a member of our congregation.
What about Cory Batey's father?
His father was a part of us too.
Okay. What was your understanding of Cory Batey's aspirations growing up in your church?
Well, he wanted to be a football player, then a professional football player. He wanted to attend school and make a good, wholesome life for himself.
And since June of 2013, have you spent time with Cory Batey?
Yes,
And have you seen changes in Mr. Batey?
Yes, he was, since the incident took place, he was very sorry for what took place, and we've talked many times about it, prayed about it, and could I just say this, my heart cries for the victim and her family, because we have a great concern because of what has happened.
And what does Judge Watkins need to know about Cory Batey before he determines Cory Batey's sentence?
I feel that Cory has learned a great lesson through experience and the culture that he's been involved in, that if he had another opportunity, I'm sure he would never ever drink again, nor be involved with someone aggravating him to do anything against his will, against anybody else's plan.
And Mr. Batey is a member of his church, of your church, is that right?
Yes,
And since June of 2013, has he been a regular attendee?
Yes, and he's been the video man for the congregation too. He's been operating the video camera there.
And what do you think, what are your thoughts on Mr. Batey rehabilitating into society after he leaves prison?
I would do all I can, and my prayers will be with him, that he would be able to be strengthened and be able to be strong enough to come out and make a difference in society and help other young men not face the same situation he's faced.
That's all the questions I have.
Cross-examination.
Pastor Grimes,
Yes, ma'am.
good morning.
Good morning.
You said that you know Mr. Batey for 20 years. Is that correct?
Yes, I know the family for 20 years.
Yes, his family. And how long has Mr. Batey himself been a member of your congregation?
Approximately about 10 10 years or so.
10 years he's been a member?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I assume that your church is not the same as Mount Zion Baptist Church, correct?
No,
Okay. How often did he attend your church?
on a regular basis now. He came as often as he could, because when he started school, he started doing some other things, and especially with the campus he was on.
So did he begin to come less often after high school?
No, he came as regular as he could.
Okay. And during the time that you've known him, the time that you've spent with him, has it been mostly at church, seeing him come to services?
I've been at other family events and been around him at other family events that they would have.
Okay. And are those events that his mother and aunts and uncles and other family are at?
Yes,
And I would assume that you've probably never gone out with him on a Friday or Saturday night,
No, ma'am.
and never spent kind of any of that late night, evening hours social time with Mr. Batey.
No, ma'am.
And were you familiar with some of the things that were going on in his life prior to June 22nd, 2013? I know that you said that you've met with him since he was incarcerated after, but did you come to court and actually watch any of the trial testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you are aware of what the evidence is against him?
Yes, ma'am.
And I would assume, have you ever seen any of the photos that were taken of the victim in this case?
Not really, partially.
You've partially seen them?
Partially what I could see when I was in court, but I couldn't see very much then.
Okay, so even where you were sitting in court, you were able to partially see it?
Or, what I could see, because sometimes they would let us see some of it, especially the dorm rooms and the hallways and stuff like that. Otherwise, I didn't see anything other than that.
Okay, so the actual photographs of the victim, you weren't able to see those? But were you in the courtroom when they described what was in those photographs?
Yes, I was.
And so you heard what Mr. Batey was doing to this victim?
Yes,
And do you think that is someone that does those actions, do you think that is someone of good character?
Well, when you're under influence of another spirit, I can't answer, because that spirit that he was under could make you do anything.
And what spirit is that you're referring to that he was under?
From what I understand, he was under the influence of alcohol.
Okay. Well, as a pastor, I would assume that you've encountered many people that drink alcohol.
Yes,
And I would assume that most of those people, actually probably almost all of those people, do not commit violent crimes like this rape.
Some have.
How many would you say?
I really don't take account of them, because I see so many different people. And when people get to drinking, it seems like that personality and attitude changes.
And so you think you're here saying that you think that alcohol causes people to rape?
I can't say. I'm not a psychologist.
And would it make sense to you that the psychologists say that it doesn't dramatically change your behavior, that whatever you would have done?
I still couldn't answer that, because I'm not that familiar with it.
So you don't know?
No, I don't know.
And you don't know what it is that made Mr. Batey do that to this victim?
I sure don't. I just said, what I just said was the spirit of the alcohol. From what I understand, that he was under the influence of alcohol and all this took place, and evidently he blacked out during the period of this going on, and he wasn't aware of what was going on at the time.
And is that what Mr. Batey told you?
That's what I was informed.
By who?
By Mr. Batey.
Okay, so Mr. Batey told you that he was drunk and blacked out.
Yes,
Did he tell you what he did in the dorm room, and that he only did it because he was drunk?
Well, he really wasn't familiar with all that, because he didn't really say anything had taken place. He was under the influence of alcohol. And we prayed about it, and he became godly sorry, because I don't know what happened. He was just inside the room, and things took place, but he said he can't remember everything. So that's as much as I went into it with him.
And you were here for the entire trial, correct?
Yes.
Do you remember the inconsistencies in what Mr. Batey could remember and what he couldn't remember?
No, I really didn't pay a lot of attention.
You didn't hear any of that?
No.
But there were certain things that he remembered perfectly and other things he couldn't remember at all. Do you remember he was able to type out a really long quesadilla order on his phone and send it to his friend?
Was that before or after?
It was right before.
Okay, well, he might not have been so intoxicated then.
Okay, well, do you remember the trial testimony that he had not had any alcohol for an hour and a half before that
I don't
time?
remember that. I must not. I wasn't here then.
Okay, so you didn't hear the testimony that he had been in his dorm room with another female, Miss Quayla Royster, for an hour before this, and there was no
He
drinking.
wasn't there for that.
Well, I mean, she can ask the question. He knows, he knows. If he does it, he does it.
I'm trying to recollect. I don't remember that.
You don't remember
No.
that he hadn't had any alcohol for an hour and a half before he
I
sent that text?
don't remember that statement.
Okay, so everything that you're basing your opinion on is just Mr. Beatty's generalization.
Yes,
And did you go through any amounts of alcohol that he drank to make your own determination of whether you thought that was possible?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And again, you are a very close family friend of the entire Beatty family.
Yes,
Did you know about the prior charges that he had for aggravated assault, that there was an assault on campus?
Objection, Your Honor.
No.
The state knows that there were no charges, and the state knows that a fellow DA in her office cleared it.
Well,
So I don't know how.
Wait a minute. Let's just move on, okay?
Did you know that he was having
Strike two, Your Honor.
Did you know that he was having disciplinary issues at Vanderbilt?
No, ma'am.
And he didn't talk to you about those things?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So the point that he really started talking to you was after he was convicted at the first jury trial and after he was incarcerated. Is that when he first started to talk to you about this?
When the incident took place, he came and we started communicating then.
And anything about Mr. Beatty using drugs or alcohol, does that have any effect whatsoever on whether or not you think he has a good character?
Well, may I just say this? When he's around me, his character is very honorable. I can't speak when he's not around me. I can only speak when he's around me. And that's what I'm speaking for right now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Pastor.
Any other questions?
Yes, ma'am. I want to ask you, this alleged assault that Ms. Norman was asking you about, did Mr. Beatty tell you that he was taking up for a friend that was being picked on?
I knew nothing of it.
Well, let's not get into that, okay?
Well, Your Honor, I feel like she opened the
Well,
door.
and I told the state to move on. They moved on, so let's not get into that.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. or Pastor Grimes, you, during your lifetime, have probably been around people that were heavily intoxicated, have you not?
Yes, sir.
Good. And would you agree that under the influence of alcohol, these people had done some things that they normally wouldn't do?
Very much so.
And was it your perception that drinking significant amounts of alcohol lowers inhibitions and changes people?
Yes, sir. And if I could just say this, I've been in the military for 29 years, and I've seen all kind, and especially when they are drinking, how their personality completely changes. So I know it has a great effect on them.
Okay. And in your profession, you don't get to deal with perfect people every day, do you?
I'm imperfect myself.
People have flaws, do they not?
That's very true.
And do you believe in second chances?
Surely I do.
Jesus believed in second chances, didn't he?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, sir. Any other further?
Next witness, Pastor Tex Thomas, Your Honor.
How many additional witnesses do you have?
One more after this, Your Honor.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
You are Pastor Tex Thomas, is that right?
James Thomas.
James, since we're in court, we better be official. And where do you pastor, Pastor Thomas?
I pastored the Jefferson Street Missionary Baptist Church for 45 years.
And let me ask you, do you know Cory Batey?
I know Cory through you.
Okay. And so you met him after June 23rd of 2013 sometime, right?
Yes.
Okay. And have you had the opportunity to spend time with Cory Batey?
Yes. You called me. You wanted me to meet with Cory. And I met with him and had him to meet with pastors in the city.
You're a little bit too close, Reverend Thomas.
All right.
You know you have a strong voice.
Would have him to meet with pastors in the city to talk with him on every Wednesday morning for 2 hours. Eventually we had him to meet with all of the pastors of our associations where Cory talked to them.
Okay. And what was your impression of Cory when you met him?
I tried to look at him at first. When I saw him on television, I had problems. And when he came in and talked with us for about 5 or 6 different weeks, how he confessed that he was absolutely wrong, in the wrong, and that he had no business doing what he did. He even came to our churches at morning worship, talked to our children, boys and girls, let them know that just because you can go to college, you can't do anything you want to do, and that he was wrong.
Good. And whose request was it that he talked to the children at your church?
I did.
Okay. And
Yes.
he did that on multiple occasions?
Not just my church, other congregations. He would, pastors let him talk to the youth departments of that church.
Okay. And why, in your mind, why was it important for Mr. Batey to talk to the different children in the different churches?
Well, we want our children to know, we've always tried to teach them that whoever go to college, you have to know you're going into a whirlwind. Anything could happen. My church is right down the street from Tennessee State and Fisk, and I've seen a lot of stuff, a lot of folk get in trouble, and you have to continue to teach young folk that when you go to college, you're going to the jungles.
What would you like the court, Judge Watkins, to know today about Mr. Batey and his potential?
Well, I'm a little prejudiced. I would like to see Cory, who knows he's done wrong, and certainly this young lady, we understand that justice must be done. I'm here as a preacher that feel like Cory deserves a second chance. I got a second chance. I was called to preach in jail, Dallas, Texas. So I know what a second chance means. I would like to see the court, and she declare judgment, but please have mercy on him.
That's all I have for this witness.
All right, cross-examination.
Pastor Thomas, good morning.
Yes, ma'am.
You said that when you first met Mr. Batey, it was actually at the request of Mr. Robinson, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so you didn't know him prior to any of this happening?
No, ma'am.
And you made a comment that you said that you had some problems when you saw Mr. Batey on TV.
Well, yes, I hurt for people who are hurt, and I was concerned about the young lady. From what I heard, the media talking about how things went on, so I had to look at him.
You were concerned about his character.
Yes, ma'am. Examine it.
And again, you didn't know him before this happened. You hadn't spent any time with him when he was with his friends on Friday, Saturday nights to know who he was before he met you that day.
No, ma'am.
And you said that one of the things that I guess kind of changed your impression about him was that he confessed that he was absolutely wrong.
Well, he sat there with us for possibly 6 weeks talking. We talked to him about it. We talked about him about going to prison, things like that, and trying to prep him that if he go, what he would have to do and what to look out for. And I watched it, yes.
And so this is from June 2013 until the time of the first trial, January 2015.
I was here for the trials. I was here. He came to the church after the first trial. He came by the church, talked to me. He would call, want to talk to me about some directions. So I just watched him.
Okay. And during that time that you were speaking to him, what did he say to you about what he did in that room? Did he tell you that after he raped the victim, that he urinated on her?
It was common knowledge, yes.
And so he admitted that to you?
He didn't, but it was common knowledge. I knew about that.
Okay.
Media, from the media.
So how is it that he confessed to you?
Simply by just saying, I did wrong, I had no business doing it, I had no business being in that kind of situation. That's the only confession that I got.
Do you remember a time when Mr. Robinson made a statement that Mr. Batey did not urinate on the victim?
No, ma'am, I didn't hear that.
Okay. And that doesn't really make sense with what you know?
No. But what I went by what the media said.
Okay. So Mr. Batey said that he didn't urinate on her. You wouldn't believe that?
That's between the media. It's 50-50.
Okay. Mr. Thomas, I have one last question. Do you remember when Mr. Batey went on Dr. Phil?
Yes.
Do you remember Dr. Phil asking him if he could go back, what he would do different?
Objection, Your Honor, that's hearsay.
Well, as Mr. Batey said,
I don't believe I watched that too close. I was so hurt, and I felt like being on Dr. Field was a dumb move, and didn't know what lawyer let him get on Dr. Field's show. I was just hurt.
Do you remember Mr. Batey saying that if he could go back and do it again, that he would leave so he wouldn't get kicked off the football team?
No, ma'am, I don't remember that because I did not pay that much attention to. I don't watch Dr. Field now.
Mr. Batey did not say that he would stop it. He didn't say he would stop anyone.
Objection, Your Honor. He said he doesn't remember what was said on Dr. Phil.
well, it's something he didn't say, so that's something we don't really need to get into.
Do you think that that shows a good character, Mr. Batey?
Well, attorney, I believe that all of us have clay feet. All of us can blow it. I knew I blew it. and only through the providence of God kept me out of the Huntsville Penitentiary in Texas. I've been there, and I've done that.
Thank you, sir.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Next witness is Ms. Audrey Batey.
Please, the clerk, and raise your right hand.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I need to get close to that mic.
Good morning, Ms. Batey. Would you state your full name for the record, please?
Audrey Jean Batey.
Okay. And you're Cory's mother?
Yes.
And you were married to Cory's father, is that right?
Correct.
You have to refer to
Oh, apologies, Your Honor. You were married to Mr. Batey's father.
Yes.
And what year did Mr. Batey's father, your ex-husband, pass away?
December the 17th, 2004.
And what caused him to pass?
He had cancer.
And how old was Mr. Batey at that time?
He was 10.
And did your husband's death affect Mr. Batey?
Yes, he did.
Could you tell us how?
He really couldn't understand it or accept it. And when we went to the graveyard to bury him, he did not watch us put his father in the grave. And he's been having problems ever since. But he always wanted to follow his dad's dreams. He wanted to go to school. He wanted to make a good life for himself and his family.
Now, Mr. Batey, you have another son, is that right?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And how many children do you have?
I have 2, but they have stepsisters and brothers.
Okay. And how many other brothers and sisters did Mr. Batey have?
It's about 11 altogether.
Okay. And how would you describe your family?
Love, caring. We're just a loving family, and we care about everybody, and we all stick together. We pray together, and we stick together.
How would you describe Mr. Batey, your son?
He's a sweet person. He's a caring person. He's always been curious about what's going on around him. He loves his family. We all spend time together. We go on vacation. We take Cory so we can be a family that stays together. When he wanted to follow his dreams.
Okay. What were those dreams?
Playing football and, seeing the world and getting a good education.
What did you think when you learned about the charges and accusations against Mr. Batey?
I couldn't believe it was my son. I really couldn't. Because I know how he cared about people, and I know that wasn't Cory.
Were these allegations, charges, were they out of character for business?
Yes, we real out of character for Cory.
And what do you base that on?
Him, the type of person he is.
Have you met Miss Lackey?
No, I haven't. I've just seen her in the courtroom.
Would you like to meet her?
I would.
What would you tell her if you had the opportunity to meet her?
That I'm sorry, that wasn't my son, and will you forgive us?
You can demonstrate your sorrow, but the state has rejected, so.
But would you like to have the opportunity one day to meet her?
Yes, I would.
What do you want the court, Judge Watkins, to know about your son as he is deliberating on the length of sentence to send your son to prison today?
That he's a good guy, strong, loving son, father. He's never been in trouble, and that I love him, and please have mercy on my son. Let him go ahead on and finish his education and his career. Because like we say, everybody deserves a second chance.
Have you observed Mr. Batey grieve over his death?
Many times. Yes, I have.
Do you think your son can be a productive member of society?
Yes, I do. Very much.
And why do you think that?
Because that's not my child that did what went on. I don't know exactly, but he's a strong, intelligent, family-loving guy, and I know a mistake was made, and I know he would never do anything like this again.
And you have a grandson, right?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Batey's son?
Mm-hmm.
And how old is he?
19 months, I think, if I'm correct.
And have you seen Mr. Batey interact with your grandson?
Yes, I have.
What type of father is he?
Loving, caring. He's just a sweet child. He made a mistake.
That's all the questions I have.
Cross-examination.
Ms. Batey, just a few questions. Like all mothers, you want the best for your children,
Yes,
certainly. And your son, Cory Batey, had some tremendous opportunities, did he not?
Yes, sir.
And when his natural father died in 2004 at 10 years of age, he was going into middle school.
Correct.
And you said that he had problems ever since his father died. Were those anger issues?
No, he just couldn't accept the fact that his father was gone and he missed him. Those were the problems that he had. No anger issues.
So any issues he might have had in school, you said those were related to
No.
his father passing?
He was always good in school.
Okay. So it did come about, as we all know, that he was given a scholarship to Innsworth High School.
Correct.
And did well there.
Yes.
Met some very fine people, Coach
Yes.
Whitfield, and just a whole lot of folks that did everything they could to help him and give him success.
Yes.
Do you know whether or not Innsworth did drug testing while your son was in high school?
No, I did not.
Okay. Were you aware of any issues he had prior to reaching the age of 18 and going to Vanderbilt, that he had any issues with marijuana or alcohol?
No.
So he never came to you, or you never saw anything?
No, sir.
When he went to Vanderbilt, again on the football scholarship, that was a great opportunity, was it not?
It was a blessing.
And again, the opportunities he had there, a lot of them were because of his athletic ability, but he also was an intelligent young man, correct?
Correct.
And he is. And were you aware of any of the issues that he had with drinking or using marijuana at Vanderbilt?
No.
And as General Norman asked the pastors, certainly, they weren't with him on the weekends at night and on the campus, and you weren't either, correct?
He would come home on the weekends. I would wash his clothes.
Okay, all right.
I would call him every day, even the weekends.
How about the night of June 22nd, 2013? Did you talk to him that night?
I can't remember.
You know what night that was, though, correct?
Yes, sir.
You sat through all of the trials.
Yes, I did.
And you've heard the testimony, and you've heard the text messages that were read into the record about that night.
Yes.
And about the activities of your son that evening with the different women that he was with.
Yes.
Okay. Did you know any of them?
Yes.
Okay. And the text messages, do you remember one that he sent after the incident to Antonio Richardson, telling Mr. Richardson, and I won't use the language, but that over the past year, I, referring to Mr. Cory Batey, have been messing up. I failed a drug test, missed class, trying to say I raped a bitch with some other teammates.
Did I remember that?
Yes.
I heard it in the courtroom.
All right. And I suspect you would say that is not the Cory Batey, the son that you know.
No.
Did you know that he had failed a drug test at Vanderbilt?
No, I did not.
Did you know he
did not inform me of that.
Did you say he or they? I'm sorry.
They.
They being Vanderbilt?
Mm-hmm.
Had he signed a release for you to be privy to his activities there?
I'm sure he did.
Well, when you say you're sure, you realize when someone becomes 18...
I really don't know.
Okay. That person, the 18-year-old, has to sign to let any college or university tell their parents anything that they're up to, correct?
Correct.
All right. And actually, I believe over the years you've worked at Vanderbilt as well.
Correct.
Okay. And so you weren't aware, failed drug test, you weren't aware that he wasn't going to class, and that he was in danger of being kicked off the football team.
No, sir.
You thought everything was just going fine and dandy with him, correct?
I sure did. Coach Franklin would have gave me a call.
During the time that he was living in your home before going to Vanderbilt, when he turned 18, was his older brother still living there?
No.
Okay. And his older brother, is that Clark?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And how much older is your son Clark than Mr. Cory Batey?
Cory's 22, Clark's 29, about 8 years difference.
Okay. Okay. And so was your son Clark a role model to Mr. Cory Batey growing up?
When his father passed, he asked Clark, would you take care of your mom and your brother? And yes, he was.
Okay. Were there any other adult males in the household from that point on?
He was just around family.
Okay. Well, was Mr. Marshall Johnson someone that was a role model?
But he wasn't a role model. I mean, Cory was gone off to school.
Okay. When you say gone off to school, was Innsworth a boarding school for Mr. Cory Batey?
No, it was not.
Well, Mr. Marshall Johnson was living with you in 2011.
Yes, correct.
The relevance of this.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, so he would have still been in high school living at home.
Well, when he was at Innsworth, most of the time he was with his friends.
Okay.
And doing sports. He'd come home, do his work, go to bed.
And I don't want to go belabor this, but as far as the issues at Vanderbilt, were you aware, pardon me, that he had any issues with their disciplinary board?
No, sir.
Student affairs?
No, sir.
And the young lady who is the mother of his child was not in the picture until after this incident occurred, correct?
I'm not sure, sir.
You don't Don't know. And during the time that Mr. Cory Batey was on bond between trials and prior to trial, did he go to any college, go to any schools that you know of?
Yes, he went out to National Tech.
Okay. And
he tried to get in up TSU.
Did he have any employment during that time?
Yes, he used to work for a temporary service.
Okay. So
For
he did
about
have
a week.
Well, but he did have some funds available to him, correct?
No.
Not even
He
from
couldn't
you?
be funds. Yeah, a roof on his head and food on the table.
Okay. You've not seen any of the images, have you, from the cell phones?
No, sir.
The incident?
No.
That's all right.
All right, anything further?
Ms. Batey, General Moore asked you about if you knew whether Cory knew anything about Cory there being a disciplinary investigation at Vanderbilt. Do you remember him mentioning that?
Yes, I do.
And if your son, Cory Batey, was taking up for someone who was being bullied and picked on, would that be the type of son that you intended to raise?
Excuse me, aside from leading, she said she knows nothing about it. Sort of changed.
Well, Your Honor, I can.
Well, I think you've made your point.
Because it keeps coming up, even though Your Honor said it's not relevant. But
The issue of character is raised, and so that, I presume that's why the state branches certain questions.
As well as basis of knowledge.
hypothetically, your son, Cory Batey, took up for someone who was being picked on and bullied at a party.
And Your Honor, I checked to that, Your Honor, it's ruled on it, and to ask a lay witness a hypothetical question is improper.
Mr. Robertson, you've made your point.
Okay. Was Cory predominantly raised by men or women?
Both.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor, nothing.
All right, thank you. Okay.
No further witnesses, Your Honor. Request that Mr. Batey be allowed to read his letter of allocution.
Okay, you can do it there at the podium. Over here.
To the court. First and foremost, I would like to thank the court for allowing me to express my apologies to Ms. Ladd. I would like to start by saying that I'm deeply and sincerely sorry for my foolish behavior that took place on June 23, 2013. My actions that night were not intentional, nor were they a reflection of my character. My father would be very upset with the position I find myself in today. My mother and family did not raise me in any way to mistreat anyone, let alone a woman, as I have been raised predominantly by women. I hope that if not today, maybe one day you will find it in your heart to forgive me for any damages that I may have caused. If I had the capability to rewind time and change how certain events transpired, I would. Secondly, I would like to apologize to my mother, my family, and everyone who has supported me up until the events that took place on June 23, 2013. I have always tried to carry myself in the best way I could. I let my guard down one night, and now I must suffer the repercussions of doing so. I hope and pray through God's mercy that everyone I have let down, especially my family, will be able to forgive me. My prayer also is that in God's timing, I will be able to make the same people I have let down proud again. Whatever God has in His plan for me, I humbly accept and will embrace those opportunities whenever they present themselves. I would also like to extend an apology to an institution who has played a pivotal role in my life. The hospital where I began my life and took my first breaths. The employer who has provided an opportunity for my mother to provide for my brother and I. A university and an athletic program that gave me an opportunity to better myself and potentially my family. I would like to extend an apology to that community as well. I apologize to Vanderbilt University and anyone associated for my ignominious behavior. My intentions for attending Vanderbilt was not to bring negative attention nor negative behavior, but to better myself and to set an example for my children and future generations by acquiring a world-class education, as Coach Franklin and his staff advertised to my mother and I. My goal was to set an example for young individuals in my community to show them how far any God-given talent, when recognized, can take you. Me setting that example has taken a detour, and now I must embrace a different approach and set an example and inspire my community. I never could have predicted myself to be in a position I would not advise someone else to be in. I tried my very best to avoid any situations that would put stress on my mother and embarrass my family. I think I failed in those regards. I hope that Vanderbilt hears and accepts my apology. I have continuously asked God for forgiveness, and I feel in my heart that I have been forgiven, but unfortunately that does not exclude the consequences I face with the law of Tennessee today. I would like to ask personally, in a humble and merciful manner, that Judge Watkins in his decision today to take in consideration that I do not have a prior criminal record, that my actions were not intentional and I have no recollection of the events, and also that I have an 18-month-old son that I have played an active role in his life thus far. My son needs me in his life as a guide, role model, protector, and for his development into a man. I think that it's very important for boys to have their fathers in their lives, as I had mine for the first 9 years until cancer struck. I know from my experiences, good and bad, I can be a wise and positive influence in my son's life. Since becoming a father to him, it is a role that I'm very passionate about. The love I have and feel for him, words cannot describe. Me not being there with him and to help his mother saddens me, but I know that I must face the present circumstances before I'm able to contribute to him and his mother. I understand that this court has a specific range of sentencing due to the nature of my charges, but it is my plea to you humbly, Judge Watkins, that I have a family that needs me one day, and that in your decision will you be as merciful as you feel in your heart that I deserve. May God bless Ms. Larry and her family and everyone affected directly and indirectly by this unintentional tragedy.
Okay, argument.
Court, please, we previously stated the state is not asking for consecutive sentencing in this particular case. I think going through the charges, there are 7 different charges. I think count 1 carries 8 to 12 years at 85%, being aggravated sexual battery. Count 2 carries 15 to 25 years at 100%, aggravated rape. Count 3 is 8 to 12 at 30%, being attempted aggravated rape. Count 4 is 8 to 12 at 30%, being attempted aggravated rape. Count 5 is 8 to 12 at 30%, facilitation of aggravated rape. Count 6 is 8 to 12 at 85% aggravated sexual battery. Count 7 is 8 to 12 at 85% sexual battery. We, as I stated earlier, have file enhancement factors in this particular case. I can address each of them individually if the court would like me to do that. Obviously, the first one does have a previous history of criminal behavior, even though no convictions. It's clear in this record that he has illegal drug use, underage drinking, and obviously from the testimony, I think at least a couple of instances involving assaults didn't result in any type of convictions, but I think one was pending with Vanderbilt at the time, was the testimony. Commission offense involved 2 or more criminal actors. He was a leader. The state's position in this case, there were 2 leaders, Mr. Vandenberg and Mr. Batey. But this would probably not have happened without those 2 together. Mr. Batey, the testimony was in this court was Miss Lackey started positioning her and sexually assaulting her without any conversation, however, at all. So he was the person that did a majority of the acts in this particular case, and I think was clearly one of the leaders. Defendant allowed the victim to be treated with exceptional cruelty during commission of this offense, which I think is obvious from the proof. The urination, the slapping, the use of a bottle to penetrate, throwing her in the hall, public hall there in the dorm, leaving her face down unconscious. I think all of those involved exceptional cruelty. Personal injuries inflicted upon the victim was particularly great. You heard her victim impact about injuries she is having to deal with for her whole life, the mental stress that this has put her through, the anguish that she'll live with, has been living with for the last 3 years. And if you can imagine what it is to be in her shoes, and every time you meet a person not knowing where you ought to tell them that you're the Vanderbilt rape victim, or you ought to wait for them to Google your name or see it somewhere, and never knowing who knows that and who doesn't. Every day she's going to have to deal with that. Personal injuries were particularly great, which I think is clear from the record. This was involved a victim that's committed to gratify the defendant's desire for pleasure, excitement. That goes to counts 1 and 5 because it is an element of aggravated sexual battery. I think that is clear from the proof and the video in this particular case. It was committed under circumstances which potential bodily injury to the victim was great. Obviously, the way that she was handled, being unconscious, the slapping, the bottle, all of those, and she did receive injuries, which all it requires of bodily injuries is a bruise. So I think clearly that applies to all counts. And as the state stated earlier, we've now found that he has failed to pay any of the fees assessed by this court. And under 4014-103, it states that the court can consider that as an enhancement factor that he's failed to follow the orders of this court. I think the thing the court obviously has to look at is the number of felonies. We're not dealing with one felony, we're dealing with 7. It happened over a half-an-hour period. In addition to that, the uncharged, the urination, the slapping, the hate speech, all the things that went on, not just for sexual gratification, but to humiliate and degrade another human being. And you've heard the testimony in this hearing. It's interesting, and I'm sure all the witnesses are fine, upstanding individuals that have dealt with Mr. Batey, either at church or at home, but you didn't hear from a single peer person that deals with Mr. Batey on Fridays and Saturday nights that he hangs out with, socializes with. Because I think if you did, you'd hear another Cory Batey, the one that you saw in this particular case. I think there's a strong argument in this particular case, not only is he guilty of these 7 felonies, but that he perjured himself in this particular case. I think the evidence is extremely strong that shows that he was not blacked out during this. You've heard all the testimony. You heard his testimony in trial where he said, yes, he came up with this after he heard Mr. Vandenberg testify that he had blacked out at a hearing prior to the first trial. You heard his statements to Vanderbilt being very specific and never saying anything about being blacked out. You heard his statement to the police being very specific about details and never stating he blacked out. You saw all the text messages he sent to his friends and cohorts after this incident. None of them mentioned he blacked out. You heard the witnesses, Courtney Hurd, Wella Royster, Jaborian McKenzie, none of which testified his actions were those of a person blacked out. And you heard the text from his girlfriend, or one of his girlfriends at the time, Sarah, who's the one that we witnessed come over at 3 o'clock in the morning after he called her after this crime. And she texted him shortly after this that I was with you that night and you were fine. There's no way you could have been blacked out. All the evidence of all the text messages, the phone use, the use of a condom, everything he was saying, his actions of just watching him walking up and down the hall, it's clear that he was not blacked out, that the alcohol did not have that effect. Even his own experts, Dr. Lippman testified about how a person would act during a blackout. He said you might be able to do very minimal things that you do on an everyday basis, like maybe dress yourself or do something that's almost automatic, but you wouldn't be able to use your cell phone, take photographs, send texts, make decisions on where to go and who to call and have 10-minute phone conversations, things of that nature. So his own expert, Dr. Lippman, even testified about an article he said he peer-reviewed. He was one of the peer-review people, stating that people charged with sexual abuse, commonly, a large percentage of them claim alcoholic blackout, and that there's a large percentage of malingering in those situations, which I think is clearly what we have here is Mr. Batey refusing to take responsibility and trying to blame it on alcohol. And even you heard Dr. Walker, the other expert, who even expressed his reservations about a blackout. He said that might be possible, but he said based on his prior inconsistent statements, based on all of his actions during this, that those would state that there wasn't a blackout. So I think clearly the court can find that he's misled this court, attempted to mislead the jury, and committed perjury in this particular case. Again, I'm not going to belabor the points, and then he talks about his child, and unfortunately that child was conceived after he was charged in this case, knowing that he was probably going to the penitentiary, knowing that he would not be able to support that child or be a father of that child because of the overwhelming evidence in this case. Again, mental anguish by this victim, I think, cries out for this court to give the maximum sentence. I would state to the court 4035-103B, which is guidance for the court in sentencing, saying confinement is necessary to avoid depreciating the seriousness of the offense, or confinement is particularly suited to provide an effective deterrence to others likely to commit a similar offense. I don't think there's probably ever been a case that could send the message of a deterrent to other people in this situation. This has been an issue all across our country on college campuses. Sexual violence is evidently just running rapid in our country, not only our country, but all across the world, and campuses all across the world. This is going on a regular basis. So I think because of that, this particular case particularly can serve as a deterrent effect. And you cannot appreciate the seriousness of this offense, not only a sexual assault, but a violent assault, and an assault which just, that's depravity of mind is the only statement, only term I guess I can come to is what was done to this extremely intelligent young woman. I would just ask this court to sentence Mr. Batey to the sentence that his actions, this case, clearly justify based on all of his actions that particular night, and that should be 25 years.
All right, thank you. Robert.
Your Honor, we're here today to provide the court with evidence and information on mitigating factors and to discuss the enhancement factors filed by the state in determining a specific sentence to be imposed for Mr. Cory Batey for the crimes for which he was convicted on April 8th of 2016. With regard to the enhancement factors argued by the state today, it is clear, the evidence has been clear from the record, that Mr. Batey does not have a criminal conviction. Any suggestion of an assault, it was cleared by Mr. Thurman's own office. So I don't know how he could characterize it otherwise.
I don't think there's anything in the record about that, Your Honor, please.
I didn't hear you.
I said I don't think there's anything in the record about that being cleared by anybody. All I know is it was pending at Vanderbilt.
This is just argument.
You've seen the record, and that's why it didn't come in to begin with, Your Honor. So
I haven't seen any record.
I'm sorry.
Okay, go on, Ms. Ross, move on.
So, to suggest otherwise is just disingenuous. And Your Honor has read our response to these. I know you have indicated that, but we suggest, Your Honor, and argue that the proof was not that Mr. Batey was the leader in the commission of this offense, that actually he was provoked and encouraged by the other members in the room, 2 of which were sober, 1 of which took the stand in both trials, testified he was sober and did nothing. Your Honor, we have stated the applicable case, State versus Arnett, as to why the factor regarding the exceptional cruelty during the commission of offense does not apply. We've also argued State versus Arnett with regard to the personal injuries not being particularly great and why they should not be classified that way. In addition, Your Honor, we have argued and provided information as to why this is not, the court should not consider the enhancement factor that Ms. Lackey, that this crime was committed to gratify Mr. Batey or for pleasure or excitement. And part of those have to do with the fact that the charges were aggravated. All of that was taken into consideration with the charges and the indictment and cannot be considered for aggravating factors today. Mr. Batey is a range 1 standard offender, we suggest, Your Honor. Mr. Batey does not have a criminal record. He has no history of violence against women. He has no history of being a risk to society. Mr. Batey's conduct on the night of June 23rd, 2013 neither caused nor threatened serious bodily injury. Mr. Batey acted under strong provocation and encouragement of co-defendants, and Mr. Batey's level of intoxication greatly affected his judgment in committing the offense. And finally, Mr. Batey did not intend to violate the law the night of June 23rd, 2013. Those are the mitigating factors we have relied on. We respectfully request that Your Honor consider all of the mitigating factors provided in our pre-sentence memoranda that have been further supported by today's testimony and record. We further reiterate that none of the enhancement factors provided by the state apply to Mr. Batey pursuant to the statutes, case law, and the facts presented in the evidence today. Furthermore, we request that Your Honor merge Mr. Batey's convictions. We have previously submitted a memorandum in support of merging and or dismissing the charges as they are multiplicitous. We would request that based upon the same memorandum, we are now renewing our request to merge those counts as lesser included convictions based on a single act of Mr. Batey. The evidence at trial, Your Honor, has shown that the events of June 23rd resulted in the worst case scenario of a young man being at the wrong place at the wrong time, and of a young woman being at the wrong place at the wrong time. This was not a scenario of 3 young black men lurking behind a building and waiting for a vulnerable young lady. Mr. Batey never intended to meet with Mr. Vandenberg or Ms. Lackey that day. Mr. Batey didn't even know Mr. Vandenberg or the victim. In fact, Mr. Batey would have never met Mr. Vandenberg or the victim had the timing of certain events changed by mere minutes. And we talked about, I have said before, Your Honor, talked about all the planets and stars lining up in the worst possible way. If only Mr. Vandenberg's cab with Ms. Lackey dropped him off 5 minutes later and 5 minutes sooner. If only Mr. Vandenberg had accessed the key to her apartment. If only the line at Qdoba had been 5 minutes longer or 5 minutes shorter. If only Mr. Batey had walked his friend, Miss Royster, outside 5 minutes later or 5 minutes earlier. Or if Mr. Batey had simply stayed in the room with Miss Royster, despite the urging of her friends, their paths would have never crossed. Pointing out these random possibilities is not an effort to deflect fault elsewhere, Your Honor, but it shows the impossible odds it took for the events to occur. But therein lies the lesson for young adults. Yes, this can happen to you. The events of the night of June 23rd did happen, and it has changed the lives of the victim and Mr. Batey forever. Mr. Batey takes ownership of his wrongdoing on June 23rd, and he is remorseful. He has used this tragedy to educate others on binge drinking and the impact of making poor choices and decisions. Tragedy doesn't flow from this case, Your Honor, it pours. There are no winners, only losers and survivors. 5 lives collided under impossible odds. Mr. Batey had a bright future on the football field. Everything was in place for him to succeed there. He will no longer run freely on fields of grass for the chance of thousands, but instead he will pace the halls of concrete with walls of iron bars to the chance of prison guards. Unfortunately now for Mr. Batey, his greatest impact moving forward will not be as a role model and leader on the field, but instead as the lead-in to a conversation about college culture and the 5 minutes that forever ruined his life and the lives of 4 other promising young college kids. In closing, I want to reiterate that confinement is necessary for deterrence and to protect society from a defendant who has a long history of criminal conduct. The sentence imposed today should be the least severe measure necessary to achieve the purposes for which the sentence is imposed. Although Mr. Batey has been found guilty of committing crimes on June 23, 2013, he is neither a threat to society nor does he have a long history of criminal conduct. This court has the authority to make this detour in his life, as Mr. Batey has chosen to view it, to make it a goodbye to a mother, a brother, and a son, or leave hope and make this detour. And until I see you again, my mother, my brother, my son. Cory Batey will be a meaningful and productive member of society. We ask and implore that this court implement justice for all, and that his sentence be structured accordingly, which is the minimum required by law. Thank you.
All right, anything further?
Just a few things, Your Honor, please. Obviously, I think we're dealing with a lot more than 5 minutes. We're dealing with 30 minutes of this attack. We're dealing with days and days of attempting to cover up and to lie to the police and everyone else to cover this up. This wasn't a 5-minute thing, clearly. He talks about no criminal convictions. That's not the requirement. It's criminal behavior is the requirement, which I think illegal drug use and alcohol are. And obviously you've heard the testimony, take for what it's worth, about the salty behavior that was involved. I'm not sure what trial I was in, but to say that there were 2 sober people, totally sober people there, and they provoked Mr. Batey. I don't think there's any testimony in this record about Mr. Batey being provoked. Said he started doing it as soon as he got into the room. And then to stand up and say that this victim was not treated with exceptional cruelty, when not only do you rape her in every way you possibly can, but you urinate on her, you slap her, you put a bottle up her anally, you make racial slurs. I mean, to say that she was not treated with exceptional cruelty, I think is beyond the pale in this case. To argue that these merge, clearly the court has ruled on that. It's not multiplicitous at all. There's 2 actors even involved, plus very many different penetrations and attacks on the victim, so that's clearly not the law. This is a crime, again, of sexual gratification, violence, and depravity. And I think the statute, which clearly says that you cannot depreciate the actions of the crime, and it can serve as a deterrent effect. All across this country, and maybe even the world, as much publicity as this got. And I think his actions clearly justify the maximum sentence.
All right, thank you all. Well, I don't think anyone disagrees that this was a horrible and senseless crime. Consequences to all parties have been everlasting and will be everlasting. I've been in this position for almost 13 years, and I have seen thousands upon thousands of cases, many of which were very horrible cases. And I've had to make decisions about thousands of cases. And I've done that in the sincere belief that I was being fair with all parties involved, not only the victims, but the defendants as well as their families. Because when any crime occurs, particularly a crime such as this, a lot of people are affected. It's not just the victim and the defendant, it's the families that are affected, and others as well. I know my experience these last 3 years, I've had one unique experience I've had these last 3 years is the number of strangers as well as friends who have approached me about this case. Of course, I couldn't discuss it, but I've had so many to tell me this one single thing. This is such a sad, sad case. And it is. But I couldn't say that to them. All I could say is, I can't discuss the case. But it is a sad case. It is one of the saddest cases that I've ever encountered. And I've been in the legal business for for 32 years. And I've seen so many cases. And this is one of the saddest, clearly. But people, for whatever reason, young people in particular, make decisions in their lives that are often life-changing. And as a result, I have to make life-changing decisions with regard to them. And I do so. I do so as honestly and as fairly as I can. And I try to always do the right thing. And I look at the possible consequences of individuals' behavior. And I weigh it against, although I look at each case individually, I also weigh it against all of the other kinds of cases that I have to deal with and the different kinds of defendants, because all defendants are not the same. Many defendants who come in criminal court, as you probably know, are those who have a long history of criminal behavior, starting oftentimes as juveniles and graduating to adult crimes as they reach adulthood. And I see many of those. But I also see individuals who are one-time criminals, so to speak, who have gone out and done something that they knew that they should not have done, but they did. And then they have to suffer the consequences for doing so. And I've had to deal with that time and time and time again. And I do. It's my job. And I do it because I took an oath to do it, as I will have to do today with regard to this young man. All of the defendants in this case basically have life sentences. After they get out of jail or prison, they will be on the sex offender registry for the rest of their lives. And that's a life sentence in and of itself, because if you had a real understanding about what individuals go through, although they put it upon themselves, what they go through when they're on the sex offender registry, and I have knowledge of that. I served on the sex offender treatment board. I've done so the last 3 or 4 years, so I know what offenders have to deal with on a daily basis. And it's not a good experience, as it shouldn't be. if you're on it for life, that is in effect a life sentence. The court has weighed all of the factors, the enhancement factors, mitigating factors. The court has read the letters in support of Mr. Batey. The court has listened to the witnesses today, the victim today, and so the court is keenly aware of how people feel with regard to this case. This is a serious case, and it's going to affect these young people, and it will hopefully have a positive effect on other individuals who may find themselves with this kind of opportunity, but take a step back and say, well, I'm not going to do that because I know if I do it, I'll go to the penitentiary, or I will shame my family. And so I do what I have to do. In this case, of course, the state pointed out TCA section 4035-103, subsection 1B, which applies that confinement is necessary to avoid depreciating the seriousness of the offenses, and confinement is particularly suited to provide an effective deterrence to others who commit similar offenses. And having said all of that, with respect to counts 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, the sentence will be 8 years. With regard to count 2, the sentence will be 15 years. And these will run concurrently with one another, but count 2 is 15 years at 100%. That's going to be the judgment of the court. I'll take a short break.
All rise. We'll be in a brief recess. Go on, stop.